Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
Where faith matters. The Rev and the Rabbi.
Good morning, I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, this has been some week for the Catholic Church and for all, Catholic with a small c as well, meaning universal, because we all celebrate this moment when people are so ecstatic about the selection of a leader. You saw the crowds in St. Peter's Square, the reaction from people around the world, so we all came together. And who better to talk about it with us today than Father Ryan Muldoon, Director of Ecumenical and Interreligious Dialogue for the Archdiocese of New York. Good morning, Father Muldoon.
Rabbi Potasnik, Reverend Bernard, great to be back with you. Thanks for the invitation.
Always good to have you on the program. Rabbi, you're going to start us off?
Yeah, you know, I was looking at the screen and the announcer said, or whoever was the host there said, and we have a new pope. And all of a sudden, Father Muldoon comes on the screen. I said, oh, my God, we got the youngest pope in the history of the church. But it was wonderful listening to you then and having you now. Tell me what it means for you and what do you think it means for others since you're involved with interreligious dialogue?
Well, I noted that when Pope Leo came out for that very first time on the balcony on the loggia, he talked about being bridge builders. One of the ways we call the Pope in Latin is the Pontifex, which literally means a bridge. And he called us to be bridges to one another. He used the term bridges through dialogue, through encounter. And so in that brief but very beautiful statement where he talked about peace, he used this image of being bridge builders. And I think that sets the tone for his papacy ahead, that he saw himself and sees himself not just as the leader of the worldwide Catholic Church, but he wants to be a leader to all people. He kept emphasizing this image of the bridge, but talking about all people.
You can't protect them unless you connect with them, right? You've got to be connected, and I think that's an important message. In selecting a pope, what do you see as the criteria?
Well, Rabbi, there's lots of things we could point to, and that's what the cardinals were gathered for more than a week to talk about in Rome before they entered the conclave. But I think one of the things that certainly seems to have been on the mind of the cardinals was that it be a global man, someone who is well-versed in the needs of not just Catholics in one part of the world, but in the worldwide Catholic Church and for people from all places on the earth. And we see that in Cardinal Prevost, now Pope Leo. He, of course, very notably, is the first American pope, but he's not just an American. When we're recording this, we're only just a few hours after the election, but by my rough calculation, he has spent about 33 years outside the U.S. And about another 36 in the U.S. So he's from America. He's spent plenty of time in the U.S., but he was a bishop in Peru, very close to his people there. He even gave a shout out to them in Spanish from the loggia as he was introduced to the world. He spent a number of years in Rome, first as the worldwide head of his religious order that he's a part of, the Augustinians, and then for these last few years, after being called by Pope Francis and made a cardinal, he occupied a very prominent post within the Vatican, where he was responsible for helping with the nominations of bishops around the world. So he's a global man, certainly from the States, but has this vast experience in Latin America, understands Rome and the dynamics of the Church, and I think that was something that would have been central on the minds of the cardinal electors.
Father, the reality is that this could have profound religious, social, and political implications because the papacy has traditionally been associated with European, particularly Italian leadership. So an American pope could signify a shift in ecclesiastical influence from Europe to the global Northwest, especially the United States. Uh, will this stir some of the traditionalist factions who view American culture as, we're individualistic, consumerist, and theologically liberal? Do you think that's going to be some of the reaction to this pope?
I think time will tell, Reverend Bernard, but I think you're asking the question that a lot of folks are asking themselves in these days. And I think that Pope Leo is going to have to fight to show that he's not just an American. We know that his biography proves that, but he's going to have to prove that now as Pope. We noticed that he didn't say anything in English, and I don't think we need to read too much into that, but just to say, maybe he's taking into account that he doesn't want to be perceived as just an American. He'll tell us more in these days, and he may have told us by the time your listeners hear this about his selection of a name. But his selection of the name of Pope Leo, at least to my mind, calls to mind the last Pope Leo, the 13th, who was known as sort of a pope around social issues. He fought deeply for the rights of workers and the dignity of labor. And so we'll have to see if some of that was part of why he chose the name of Leo and whether or not those are priorities that he brings to his pontificate.
Father Muldoon, you're very involved in interreligious dialogue, and we've been privileged to sit at the table with you. We mean Reverend Bernard and other faith leaders. And I can tell you over the years, I've met many religious leaders. Not everyone makes interfaith a priority. It's there, but it's not a priority. Cardinal Dolan has made it a priority. Do you see interfaith communication being a priority? Is it too early to tell? I don't see how you can be a global leader without including others in the conversation of different faiths.
I see reasons for hope, Rabbi. I see, first and foremost, the fact that in those brief remarks from the Loggia after being introduced, the Pope spoke about dialogue. And that, to me, is a great sign of hope that ecumenical and interreligious dialogue will be a priority in his pontificate. I think we also have to look at who he is succeeding. And we know that dialogue was a key commitment of Pope Francis. Cardinal Prevost, before he became Pope, he was called to be a bishop by Pope Francis, and then he was appointed as a cardinal by Pope Francis, called to work in a key Vatican position by Pope Francis. And so we expect that he'll have some of those same chief concerns of his predecessor, Pope Francis, and dialogue was certainly among the chief concerns of the late Pope, and we hope that it will be for Pope Leo as well.
When religious history is written, we need to make sure that it doesn't stop in the Middle Ages, because if you look back in the Middle Ages, relationships with other communities, I think of the Jewish community, then the Catholic community, was not a good one. But it evolved. It became a great one. Today, the relationship we share, we can have open discussion. We can disagree with each other without destroying the relationship. We've come a long way, and it's very important that people know that we're at a different point in time. And that's why I say the Pope being elected is a moment for all of us, because we know we're going to be at the table at some point.
Right. I think that.
Go ahead, please.
Just to say that Pope Leo, being a member of a religious community, the Augustinians, they have a rich tradition. We think of St. Augustine, for whom they're named, who lived and died in the late 300s and died in the early 400s. He realizes that he's a sort of modern instantiation of a long religious tradition, and I hope that he's the Pope we need for these times.
What about on political level? There are between 53 and 60 million Catholics here in America. I don't know if you have exact numbers, but I think it's about 24% of the American population. And back in 1960, with the election of John Kennedy, the first Catholic president of the United States, there were concerns about the influence of the Vatican on his policies, his positions, his domestic policies, and his foreign policies. With that many voting 53 million adult who identify as Catholic, that many individuals, a voting population in America. Are there concerns about, the influence that he would wield in American politics? And I know it's early, so we're speculating here.
Yeah. Again, Reverend Bernard, I think you're giving voice to a question that's on the minds and hearts of a lot of folks, and that kind of goes back to my pointing to Pope Leo as a global man, as a global religious leader. I think he'll have to fight that uphill battle of showing that he's not just American. But there might be some way in which he touches the minds and hearts of American Catholics in a way that another pope might not have.
We're going to take a break. We got to take a break, Rev.
Okay, let me come
and
back.
when we
All
come
right.
back, we'll listen to the next question. Thank you. Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
And we are continuing our conversation with Father Ryan Muldoon, Director of Ecumenical and Interreligious Dialogue for the Archdiocese of New York. Rev?
So, Father, before the break, I was going to ask you a question about the Global South, because Catholicism, Christianity as a whole, is most rapidly growing in Africa, Asia, and, of course, Latin America. Do you think, first of all, what's the relationship with this Pope with the Global South? There is, of course, a disconnect between the American Church and the Global South. Do you think that he can bring reconciliation and solidarity? Two questions for you.
Yeah, Reverend Bernard, I certainly think that you're pointing to the Global South is key to understanding the man that we're going to get to know as Pope Leo. He spent some 20 years in Peru, and so he knows that reality of the church growing and flourishing there. From my vantage point, one of the things that is frequently on my mind is the dearth of priestly vocations that we experience in the United States and in some traditionally Christian and Catholic countries, including in Europe. And certainly we think of how vocations are flourishing in those places that you just mentioned, and would have been flourishing in Peru. I believe that part of then Father Prevost's biography is that while he was in Peru, he was for about a decade involved in seminary formation. And so that will be an interesting piece to begin to understand about how he was involved, his experience in recruiting and training young men for the priesthood in a place where I imagine they would have been bursting at the seams, whereas today we're quite concerned in our own context for the lack of the number of vocations.
If you're having problems with your septic system and you're tired of spending so much money each year to have it pumped, then SeptiClean is the answer for you. SeptiClean is an advanced specially formulated blend of bacteria used in the treatment of home and commercial septic systems. The breakdown of waste in your system relies on biological activity of naturally occurring bacteria. SeptiClean restores the natural biological process in your septic system and boosts the existing biological activity. SeptiClean is completely safe on all plumbing and can help prevent expensive emergencies in pumping. SeptiClean has approximately 6 to 100 times the bacteria count of other leading off-the-shelf brands in a 1-year supply. SeptiClean comes in a water-soluble pack, which you flush down the toilet once a month with no mess or stress. Save time, money, and maintenance on your septic system. Find SeptiClean at Emporium True Value Hardware on Main Street in Sag Harbor, or visit micro-tab.com. That's micro-tabb.com. Micro-tabb.com.
This episode is brought to you by Cadillac. When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the Cadillac Certified Service Fresh Start Tire event. Visit Cadillac.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating U.S. GM dealers only. Highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends 5/31/2025. Not available with other offers.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
Father, one of the things we've learned about prediction is that people shouldn't predict. Right? Prophets had some ability to do that. We don't. And the predictions that were being made, oh my God, this is going to take a week till we find out who the new pope is. It's certainly not going to be an American. It just, everyone who made these predictions was wrong. And by the way, the selection of the pope, the decision was determined in less time than in ranked choice voting that we're going to have here in New York. So maybe it's a lesson for people. Just let it play out and stop trying to oversee the process. There are people in that room who know what they're doing, who have tremendous resumes. They're capable of selecting a leader. And I think we ought to stop this business. We have more important things to focus on than predicting who the next pope is going to be.
I agree. And I think we have to have some sympathy for the cardinals and for this man now elected a pope. I was thinking in these days about how most of the men potentially elected from the College of Cardinals are in their 70s. Pope Leo is 69. These are men who are at an age where they're getting ready for retirement, and as much as a priest is ever retired, maybe giving up a bit of the administrative duties and returning to pastoral work. Here he is at 69 years old, beginning this whole new project, this whole new mission as the global leader of the Catholic community, as the voice of the Catholic Church to the world. My goodness, what a weight has been laid upon his shoulders.
When I walked into the studio today, our producer, Rich Redabali, said something to me, and Rich is a very proud Catholic. He said, I think people are yearning for understanding what is the mission of the church. And I think the same thing is true of all of our faith communities. People want to know, what does my tradition say to me about a number of things? But I want to know the essence of my tradition. And I find there are some people who talk it's about, but not the it. They don't go to the core. They go to, the extraneous areas. And I think it's important that people understand we do have a core mission. We have very, very fundamental tenets of our faith, and we want to preserve those tenets, but people have to know what they are.
Indeed, and I think he tried to boil down in those brief comments on the balcony a message that is applicable to all people, no matter where they are, where they were hearing it, and what stage of life. It was a message of peace. He talked about peace in one's heart, peace in the family, peace for all people. He talked about a peace that is humble, a peace that is disarming, a word that I think was probably very intentionally chosen as we think about the Pope's role. Certainly Pope Francis took this seriously, and I think Pope Leo will as well, the role of the Pope in bringing about peace in those war-torn areas of our globe. And so what was his message as he stood there being introduced to the world? It was one of peace, one that spoke to people no matter where they were physically or where they were in their journey of life.
Yeah, even in my faith, I tend to be a pragmatist, Father. So I think about, the fact that he is going to be challenged with the needing to transcend national identity in order to be effective in his new role. Because an American pope would be historically, now it's happened, historically unprecedented and deeply symbolic. And he inherits a papacy that's both spiritual and geopolitical. That's real. So he's going to have to walk a fine line between American cultural influence, because he's a Republican, right? In terms of his political affiliation here in the United States, Rabbi. I think you mentioned that.
They did some background checking on his voting record. Yeah, he was a registered Democrat.
It took them about 5 minutes to go.
So he's going to have to walk a fine line between American cultural influence and the universal mission of the church. So as you bring up the mission and understanding what that mission, he's going to really have to get that across to the public. He's going to need our prayers. There's no doubt about this. Yeah.
Indeed. I was watching some of the coverage right after he was elected, and somebody said in jest, well, they weren't likely to choose an American, but he was the least American of the Americans. That's a funny comment, but there might be some truth to it. And I think he really is a global man, and he'll try to show that side of himself as he fights against some of those preconceptions about him that might come as a result of his nationality. One thing we should find out too, I heard along the way that he may have also become a Peruvian citizen in his years there. I'm not totally sure about that, but something to find out as well.
That's interesting. But maybe we're seeing a prophetic progression here, because it begins with the first South American Pope, right, from Argentina. And now we've gone up north to the Northwest America. Maybe there's a prophetic progression here. I don't know what it's leading to, but Rabbi said, do not try to predict the future. So I'll behave myself.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that we should note about him is that he is trained as a canon lawyer. He's trained as a church lawyer. I point that out also because we share an alma mater. He studied at a university in Rome where I also studied. I studied ecumenism and interreligious dialogue, but he studied church law. And so we'll have to see how that side of him comes through as Pope, that he'll perhaps bring a sort of legal mind, a sort of framework, a way of seeing life, seeing the church that might be different just because of his background.
We are blessed in New York to have His Eminence Timothy Cardinal Dolan, who has inspired people with his message of hope and also message of humor. And I think it says to all of us as faith leaders, we need you. You have influence, and you can be impactful on the lives of people. And I think all of us, as a result of this election, have to look within again and saying, what more can we do to be that positive influence in the lives of people?
Amen. Do you want to come and preach for me on Sunday, Rabbi?
I have to speak.
Well
I have to
said,
speak at
Rabbi.
St. Pat's. I just, I can't get over to that. No, but really, that's why it was exhilarating for all of us. My God, look at the attention being given to this man of great faith. Look how much people want him to succeed. And I think all of us have to go back and say, people want hope. Thank you so much. Father Ryan Muldoon.
Yeah, you're in our prayers, Father, because
Thank you.
I'm sure you're going
Good
to
to
be
be with you
called
both.
upon to have these conversations.
And Rev, I want to make one prediction, even I said don't predict. One day, Ryan Muldoon. Keep that name in your head and in your heart. Don't be surprised if there's another American in the background.
You never know.
Right.
You never know.
Good to be with you both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Father.
If you're having problems with your septic system and you're tired of spending so much money each year to have it pumped, then SeptiClean is the answer for you. SeptiClean is an advanced specially formulated blend of bacteria used in the treatment of home and commercial septic systems. The breakdown of waste in your system relies on biological activity of naturally occurring bacteria. SeptiClean restores the natural biological process in your septic system and boosts the existing biological activity. SeptiClean is completely safe on all plumbing and can help prevent expensive emergencies in pumping. SeptiClean has approximately 6 to 100 times the bacteria count of other leading off-the-shelf brands in a 1-year supply. SeptiClean comes in a water-soluble pack, which you flush down the toilet once a month with no mess or stress. Save time, money, and maintenance on your septic system. Find SeptiClean at Emporium True Value Hardware on Main Street in Sag Harbor, or visit micro-tab.com. That's micro-tabb.com. Micro-tabb.com.